Hey there, and welcome to Time to Lean, the podcast where you air your dirty laundry and we help you clean up your shit. I'm Crystal Britt.
And I'm Laura Danger. Think of us as your household secret weapon, taking your questions and voicemails to navigate the wild world of gender norms and household dynamics.
We dive headfirst into the nitty-gritty of how broader social issues impact our everyday lives.
So don't be shy, send us your dirty laundry.
And we'll help you clean up your shit.
This is Time to Lean. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Danger and Crystal Britt.
We're back.
Today we're going to talk about, I had a weird, what do you call it when you bump your head up against a task and then you can't figure out if you got to finish that task, but that task is going to get in the way of another task. And so I was like standing it was decision paralysis.
Yeah.
But except it was I was like ping ponging off of stuff that needed to be done. And every time I hit one thing, I was like, okay, I don't have time for that. So I'm going to get to it later. And then I'd hit another thing and be like, that one's not done either. And then I just and my body started buzzing and I was like, oh no, this is not a good start to my day. Is there like a word other than it's not decision paralysis or
other than spiraling? I mean, okay, here's what's bonkers is that I used to think that was called being a mom.
Okay. This is a great start. This is a great start because it's almost been like a year now, but I made a video on TikTok that was so oddly received. It was one of those things where usually people are like, oh, this is so relatable. This one, a bunch of people in the comments were like, that sounds like an experience I have not had. And I was going through an anxiety spiral. I was like, when your kid freaks out and then you're like, okay, how am I going to negotiate this down? Because if I give them the thing and then this is going to happen and then that's going to happen. And what if I give into this one thing and then the boundary will have been pushed and then they will internalize that boundary is malleable and then they're going to think that I am a malleable person and they're not going to trust me and then the bedtime's going to be bad and then the bedtime's going to be bad and I'm going to not hold the boundary there and I was like walking through this and my comment section was like, no, you just had that's a full-blown mental anxiety spiral. That is oh yeah, I kind of understand what you're saying, but that's not within the normal realm, I don't think.
Which is really interesting because that has never not been my experience, which is consistent with what I've got going on. Do you know what I mean? Like that makes sense. But I genuinely thought that in situations like that where it's turned up to 11, that was just what being a parent is. Specifically, that's just what being a mom is.
What being a mom is. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what is so tricky about it because there is truly so much pressure and pretty much everybody I talk to who identifies as a mother, that situation resonates. That is a sort of relatable experience to be like, oh, there are so many short and long-term implications to every single decision that I make. And sometimes it becomes unmanageable.
Yes. And I'm also going to try and look for a TikTok that I was looking at that came across my my For You page recently that is in the same vein of when a neurotypical person, it was flipping the script kind of like Clarabelle Talks does, where it was flipping the script on like this weird thing neurotypicals do, right? Where it was like neurotypicals, as a neurotypical person, it was a husband and a wife, and a husband's like, as a neurotypical person, when I walk into a room and I see a task that needs to be done, or I'm on my way to finish a task, I see another task that needs to be done, I make a note in my brain to come back to that task, and I continue on the other task I was working on until I complete it. And then I come back to it, and the neurodivergent wife goes, wait, why? Why wouldn't you just get it done right then? And he's like, because I'm working on this other task that I have to finish first. And she was like, yeah, but what if you forget to come back? And he's like, I won't. And she's like, what do you mean you won't? Like, it's a very interesting, like when you, like to your point, the comment section of like, oh no, that's not a typical experience. And you're like, what do you mean it's not a typical experience? Like that
Right.
not being a typical experience is weird to me.
Okay. And all right. So here's where we get into the nuance of this experience. So what you and I are talking about is executive function. That is,
Yes.
so every single person has executive function. It is a thing that we do, like it's a behavior, it's a thing, it's a function in our brain. And you don't have to have ADHD, autism, mental illness, disability. You don't have to have any like a pathologized diagnosis to struggle with executive function, because it's a series of skills. It's
Yeah.
behaviors. It's like, somebody will teach you how to highlight or skim or underline appropriately. Like that's an executive
Right.
function skill. It's
Right.
decision making. Um, and so if there are unique pressures that mothers face and you feel overwhelmed or you have decision fatigue, everybody's only got so much brain matter. You get decision
Yes.
fatigue and then you're under a pressure cooker of society. You may like stall out, like your executive function is going to, you might struggle with it in decision
Right.
making.
Right.
So,
Because your brain's capacity, the demand exceeds the capacity that your brain has. Yeah.
yes, excellent description of that. And what you said, I want to come back to. You said that one person might finish the task that they are currently working on and basically stick a pin, like a reminder
Mm-hmm.
pin on what they need to do next or come back to. And
Allegedly.
I,
I guess that's what they
yes.
do.
So I know you and I both have worked with like couples, partners who want to implement the fair play method or
Mm-hmm.
want to streamline their, like basically the household's executive functioning.
Right.
And a phenomenon that I found so interesting is that, and I know this is totally generalizing and very much not true for everybody, but there has been a gendered trend that a lot of the men that I have worked with, cis men who I have worked with, are more if they have ADHD, if they have struggle with executive functioning, will work on the thing that is right in front of them and assume that they will come back to the thing later. And the
Mm-hmm.
cis women
Mm-hmm.
that I have worked with, will do the thing that they're working on right now and get it done
Mm-hmm.
before they move on to the next task. What the
Mm-hmm.
hell?
Yeah. Yes. And truly, what the hell? Yeah. Okay, here's also something that I want to distinguish while we're talking about executive functioning really quickly. So there are three main components. I just took a CEU on this, so I'm pulling up my notes. There are three main components that make up executive functioning. One is working memory, one is cognitive flexibility, and one is inhibitory control, which affects like impulsivity, right? So you can see why like with something like ADHD or with something like depression, executive function and on all three fronts, working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control, are all three affected in ways that overlap and interwork with each other. But especially when it comes to cognitive flexibility, which is the ability to allow for more flexible thinking, which is something that we work on clinically in therapy, right? I did not know, I wasn't taught that as a kid, cognitive flexibility, the ability to look at a situation and go, okay, that sucks. So I'm going to change the way I'm approaching that because I've hit a barrier and now I've got to figure out a different way to solve this. It was like, no, this is not going this way. There's one right way to do it and one wrong way to do it. And I've done it the wrong way. And now I can't come back from it. Right. Like I wasn't introduced to the idea of cognitive flexibility until my first grader. Until one of my kids entered first grade and they talked about growth mindset. And I was like, what the fuck? This would have been really helpful as a kid. So I think for people socialized as women, I think it's also cognitive flexibility when it comes to the messaging that we receive about how we handle our households is something that we internalize and take and maybe feel on a much deeper level and take like moral ownership over of like, no, it means something about me if I don't perform at this like multitasked level and get these things done. I don't know that people socialized as men, that cis men internalize that messaging. Does that make sense? Like their ability to perform maybe in the work context, workplace context, but not at home.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that's really fascinating. So cognitive flexibility. Okay, so in the context, let's go back to what got me tripped up this morning.
Yes.
I am on like a 2-week. My project right now is to catch up on all of these books that I've been backlogged for the last year. Like incredible, authors have sent them to me, or it's been something on my to be read list for a really long time. And there's stuff that I want to learn for work. And like, basically I'm knocking out a ton of physical labor things in my home that have been on the back burner for the last year as I've been writing this book. And I'm reading a ton. So like I'm moving my body nonstop. And I have painted the radiators, wallpapered the bathroom, cleaned the garage. Like I've done all of these things that needed to be done or for fun. And I am behind on the dishes. I am behind on taking the trash out. I'm behind on laundry. A bunch of like there's like boxes broken down in the middle of my living room. There's all these things that need to be done, and other tasks rely on them being done.
Yes.
So this morning I wake up and I'm like, we got to get the kids out the door. I got to take my meds before I do that so I can come home and I can like get started after we drop the kids off. I go to take my meds. The meds are there, thank goodness. There is no cup. There's not a single clean cup. So
Barrier
I
one.
go So I go, there's no cup in the drying rack. No cup there. That's usually where I grab it from. So I grab up, there's an up top. There's no cup up there. Okay. So I go into the pantry. Now this is like 4 extra steps to my usual routine. I'm starting to get frustrated. And I go and there's no small cup there. The only cups that are there are big fat jars. And I'm like, that's not what I want. So I go in the kids this is step 6 now. I go to try to grab the kids cup, and the kind with that you pop the top on is there, but there's no regular. So I'm like, ew, that's going to feel weird on my lips. I don't want to drink that. So I'm irritated. Now I'm frustrated.
Feel weird because your tongue doesn't have anywhere to go. You're like, yeah.
Ew, no. Nope. And so I'm getting more and more irritated. And so I'm like, fuck. So I go I find one that I don't want to drink out of, and I go in the fridge, and there's no water in the damn water thing. No water. And I'm like, okay, great. I have enough that I can take a sip and take my medication if I tip it down. And I'm like, that's going to bother the hell out of me. Whatever.
Yeah.
So in my brain, I'm like, the kids are literally standing at the door as all of this is happening. They're waiting for me. Like, the family is waiting for me. And it's the clock is ticking. And I'm making all of these decisions and getting worked up as this is happening. And I'm like, if I don't fill the water now, I'm going to forget about it later. And when I get to it later, I'm going to be irritated because you and I were talking about this. If I wait until the last minute, I'm going to forget. And oh my God, in the middle of this, I'm like, did I fill it? I did. As I'm recalling this story.
It's so relatable. Wait, what did I do? What did I end up doing? 100%.
In the moment, I did not. I did not do it because I'm like, I'm going to stress the kids out, and then they're going to be late, and then that's going to be a problem.
The strength of will that took to leave it there.
And get this, I'm like making this decision. I'm like, I'm going to leave it in there because if I move it right now into the sink is full of dishes. I can't fit this thing underneath. Do that. So I'm getting really pissed off and really worked up. And I'm like, I got to stick a pin in this. Like you said, I got to stick a pin in this. I have to come back with this first time. I have to come back to this. I have to come back to this. the entire walk to school
Yep.
to drop the kids off, fill the
Or you're
water,
going to
fill the
forget.
water, fill the water.
Yes.
And I came back and I filled it, but then I was so thrown off and like weird about all of this. And I had been like, my flow, my mental flow was so bad that when I walked in the door, I saw everything. It's like when
Yeah.
you walk, every single thing that was wrong in my household was like, it was like throbbing at me.
Jumped
And
at
I was
you.
like,
Yes.
I got a
Yep.
box I got to break down. I kept like, and I was like, do I fill the water now? Because now I really don't know. Do I fill it now? Do I do the dishes? How many dishes do I do? I didn't empty the rack. Oh my God, I go to throw something away. I'm going here this weekend and I have a trash that is overflowing. But if I empty the fridge out into the trash, it's going to overflow. When am I going to take that out? It's hot out. This spiral just goes and goes and
Yep.
goes because every task is connected to every other task. I dropped like
Yes.
10 balls this week. And as I was thinking this, I'm like, thank God that all of these things were my responsibility this week. I would have been
Mm,
enraged at
yep.
Jack if he
Mm-hmm.
was the one who was supposed to be doing any of this and he was not. It was 100% me. But I caught myself and I was like, I wanted
Yeah.
to blame someone else.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hard relate. We were like, this has to be somebody else's fault. Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Who can
To take
I'm
some of
gonna
that pressure
blame
off.
Reagan.
Absolutely. It all trickles down. It all trickles down. That's as
Reagan.
logical a point to start as any.
Yeah.
Yes. And
So
I think that it is oh my God. I laugh because it's so relatable and it's the way I exist in my head all of the time. Right. I mean, the ADHD meds help keep it a little bit quiet, but it never goes away. And the interconnected nature of those tasks, like you said, like if any of those had been assigned to Jack, like then that creates a conflict because
mhm.
also it's hard to describe to someone. And I don't know if this is like an anxiety thing or if it's a neurodivergent thing, because I experience it too, where I'm like, if I had to hold that information in my head and then I walk in and you talk about like the disruption of the flow, for me, it's the disruption of my routine. When I get home, like in my head, it would be like when I get home from, school drop off, I do this, I do this, I do this. And sometimes it's not even intentional. It's just like the natural pattern of my routine, but I don't realize it's a routine until it's disrupted. And I'm like, fuck, now I have to, right? Like this is a disruption and now I'm irritated. The cognitive flexibility too, I have to just like throw in here is also part of frustration tolerance that you have to learn,
Oh
right?
God,
Which I
yeah.
didn't know either because I didn't learn it as a kid. I would just get really pissed off at myself when I couldn't do something immediately. There was no frustration tolerance. So
Mhm.
now I notice that like I have to teach myself frustration tolerance as I'm trying to teach my kids frustration tolerance. And times like that are when, like, that's the most activating, right? Where I have to notice how am I contributing to what's going on? How am I contributing to this issue?
Oh
And
yeah.
it's really
You
easy to be triggered by those interconnected tasks.
Yeah. I get really stressed out. I know we've talked about this before. Um, but I I had a I was like in the midst of a full-blown mental health crisis in the fall of 2021. I got diagnosed with ADHD and bipolar 2 in like November of 2021. And my distress tolerance frustration tolerance it was so paper thin. Like I truly had
Yeah.
none of it. And the messaging around parenting is it's like, oh, well, your kid is triggered because you're triggered. Like just take some deep breaths. And I'm saying that like a little bit in a tone that maybe isn't. I'm not mad at the science. Like I get it that my kids are reading my energy, but also like I don't know what to do different. Like I am
100%.
dysregulated
Yes.
and have
Yes.
very low threshold for this. How do I fix that if I don't have the the capabilities? Like
Yes.
sometimes it's spoken so it's such a judgy way that it's presented, where it's like, well, you just need to calm down. Like, you need to regulate yourself. And it's like, I fucking can't. When I am in the midst of being triggered by my children and they are bouncing their energy off of me, I would love to be able to regulate, and I fucking can't. I cannot. I am
Yep.
like physically incapable. And that's not, I'm not trying to say that as a cop out.
Right.
It is like a realistic reflection of where I am.
Right.
And I don't know what to do with that.
Well, and it's so hard to explain. I don't know. Like, are there parents that like find that very easy to do in the moment? Like, take deep breaths? Is that like, I don't know.
According to Instagram, according to like mommy accounts on Instagram. Yeah. All you need to do, Crystal, is get down on your knees and put your hand on your chest and slow breathe with them. That's all you need to do.
Which I feel like is spoken like people who don't know what it's like to experience frustration and intolerance as an adult, because it's almost instinctual. Do you know what I mean? Like that place that I am pulling from. It looks like you have a fat glass of wine.
Oh yeah,
it's a big pour. I know it's iced coffee. It just killed me.
Coffee, you know, when you see people with red wine lips, they're gonna get like chocolate coffee.
God.
Lips. I'm drinking out of a wine glass.
Sorry, that killed me. I died. It's like when I used to have a half-gallon hydro jug during sessions, and I would just like pull this comically large fucking jug and drink out of it during sessions. And I was like, I gotta find a smaller cup. This is distracting. So yeah, it's instinctual, because it's something, if you were not taught how to have flexible mindset and growth mindset and tolerate frustration, which a lot of millennials were not, because that wasn't the purpose of parenting then. It's very much a thing of like, no, I'm learning in real time with my kid what frustration tolerance looks like. So instead of taking a deep breath, I need to lock myself in the bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's right. That's the at an appropriate age level to talk to your kids about that. Something that I've been trying to talk to my kids about lately is, by the end of the day, I cannot focus. I've like one of my biggest ADHD symptoms is spacing out. I just like I'm not there, and it's against like it used to be so
it's
incredibly
against my will. Yeah, it is.
It can be so incredibly embarrassing to, in the middle of a conversation with somebody that you like love and respect and want to listen to completely zone out and not hear what they are saying, and to be like, oh no, I missed a crucial part of that conversation. Now I'm just nodding. And with kids who ask a million questions, it happens to me a lot where my kid will ask me a question and it will make sense, and I'll be like, yes, yes, yes. And then they will ask me, oh, an outlier. And I will have answered yes. And then they'll be like, oh, really? And I'll be like, oh, no, I didn't mean that you could have 3 popsicles. And I have to be like,
damn it.
Oh, now I got to walk this back. Now I got to explain it. So I've been trying to be like, at the end of the day, I have a really hard time focusing. Sometimes I answer incorrectly, or I need you to repeat yourself, and that's not you. I'm trying. Right. I'm trying, man.
Right. I'm trying. Jesus, I'm holding on by the skin of my teeth. I'm really trying. Yes. And having that, I did that last weekend when, it's a long story, but my sister was helping me doctor one of my kids' like injuries, and we were having a hard time, sensory stuff. And we were waiting for something. I don't know. We were waiting for my mom to get something else. And she looked over at me because I was like, just like this, like staring into nothing. And she went, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. And she goes, hey, are you okay? Are you disassociating? And I was like, oh yeah, I fully was. Like, I just needed a second. She was like, that's crazy. I've never seen you do that before. I was like, no, you have. You just didn't know what it was before. Like, you definitely have. I just needed to take a breather, and I couldn't do it here, so I had to do it somewhere else. It's also really hard too when you are interacting with tiny humans who are made from your DNA and they're doing things that you're like, I know this is normal. I know this is, yes, it's pushing all of my buttons and all
Mhm.
of the really charged, like with the really tender bruises. And we do this all the time. And we like, and it's coming, like my kids, same thing, where we used to call it shotgun questioning, because it was just like they just used to like shoot a buckshot of questions at us all at the same time, usually when we were driving. And I'd be like, you guys, I'm driving a multi-ton car. You can't, my brain can't, like, no more questions till we hit this stop sign, or no more questions
Yeah.
till we hit the driveway or whatever. Because it's so much information coming at you. And so I think, to bring it back to like the point of like people who are social, like people who identify as mothers, I think that that pressure to be able to handle that without any frustration or any amount of like breakdown or anxiety, like, I think one, that's where we get the idea that like women are naturally better at interconnected tasks. And it's like, no, we're not better. There's just a higher societal price if we don't do those things.
Yeah.
And there's a lower expectation for men to be able to, I don't know, execute on those interconnected tasks or see that those tasks are interconnected. And there's not a high social price for them to pay.
Yeah. This is one of those situations where I wish that we could have a social shift, and I think that it would make this easier. So what I mean by that is like I'm looking at adjusting. I'm looking at something cognitive flexibility. An example of cognitive flexibility would be adjusting to a new cultural norm or
Mm-hmm.
multitasking. And so I think what's challenging about being in a partnership where one person is in charge of maybe deciding the path or like
Mm-hmm.
setting
Mm-hmm.
things up and engineering it is, if you have a way of doing it and you're trying to bring someone else into the puzzle, if they don't do it according to the map, it really does mess with it. And like
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to have ADHD, you don't have, just like as a human being, anybody who's trying to come up with a plan and work somebody
Yeah.
else into it, when basically if the ball gets dropped or if a wrench gets thrown in, it throws off all these other things, and like in general it's going to be really hard to be flexible in that situation. But there's the additional weight of if somebody has all of the pieces and is in charge of all of the pieces and doesn't have a reliable partner who's going to, or here's the other thing. When you have a low frustration tolerance, a low stress tolerance, and you are trying to manage your own feelings and you are trying to manage your children's feelings, maybe in a household where they have a hard time, and then you are
I'm gonna
trying
have to take
to,
a nap after this
yeah,
episode. This is gonna hit in all the
here's
points.
Here's how I sound in that situation when someone else was supposed to do something. This is why I'm telling you, like, I would be so fucking mad. So fucking mad.
It's so
Because
true.
this is me. Hey, I noticed that the trash hasn't gone out. Is it possible that you could take it out right now? Or maybe be a little bit more like this is me trying to manage.
That is the nicest, because you know how it usually comes out of my mouth is, oh, are we just like shutting the lid on top of the trash when it's like sticking out of the top? Is that what we're doing now? Like
Yeah.
my go-to is sarcasm, and that's in no way is managing frustration tolerance. That's just like letting it go.
Yeah.
That's how far behind the eight ball I am on tolerating frustration and trying to correct it. Because my kids can also, I also have that really fun thing where my kids and my partner can tell when I'm saying something nice, but I'm trying to say something in a kind way, but my
Yeah.
tone is like, mm-hmm, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And they're like, please don't talk to me like that. And I'm like, then I go to that. Hey, next time, could you guys please consider maybe taking the trash out if you were the last one to put something on the top? But that's me well regulated. I have to get well regulated before I can talk like that. I can't even manage it in the moment.
No, no. I mean, I can't either. And so I squish it, I push it down until it becomes blowing up. Um,
Yes.
and so here is the thing. I have to take ownership for that. And that is something that I have to learn to deal with. And like, it isn't our family's responsibility to just like tolerate being, because honestly, like
Yes.
I'm like, hey, the trash.
Right.
Um, and I try to be really patient, but like, honestly, hearing me say, hey, the trash comes off as nicer than me being like, will you like the rage
Yes.
that
Yes.
festers. And the
Yes.
rage comes from, and I'll tell you, the rage that festers is because I feel like I have to be nice. Like I
Oh,
feel like
yeah.
I have to, I feel like I have to take responsibility for everybody else receiving my feedback, my direct feedback
Mhm. Mhm.
nicely.
Mm.
Because guess what? The
Yeah.
trash needs to go out. I'm
Yeah.
going to,
Yep.
I talk to myself and my brain that way. And I feel like everyone else should put up with it. But like, there's got to be a, there's got to be a
There's
middle
gotta
ground.
be there's gotta be a middle ground
Um,
somewhere.
and I want to say this. This has been weighing on me heavily lately as my kids have gotten older and as I've been much more open about navigating this dynamic in my partnership. I worry very much that my children walk on eggshells
Mm.
because I am going to, because my tolerance for frustration is low.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is like having open communication with my kids and partner about this
Yes. Yep.
has been a way of me just trying to be transparent.
Yes.
And when I am more well regulated, it helps everybody. It's not a
Yeah.
selfish thing to be like, I got to go on a walk. I
Yeah.
need to go on a
Yeah.
walk. I need to drink
Mhm.
water. I do need to go in the bathroom and cool down. And then I'm going to think
Yeah.
about this later and figure out how I could have prevented that.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a really good point. I think that it is a very sobering reality because I worry about the same thing, right? Like my middle kid, even as like, because I'm thinking he was in a 5-point harness, because I can remember him like, leaning forward in his seat before buckling himself in to be like, uh, what would he say? Mom, you okay? Mom, you okay? Where it was like he would hear, and then that's when I would realize he would hear me sigh and he would assume that something was wrong. I'd be
Yeah.
like, ugh, while I'm driving, and he'd be like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Oh, like they're picking up on that something's going on with me." So being transparent about like, "Hey, you know what? I'm actually at the end of my rope," and being more transparent about what's going on for me is something that I could be better at as well. And I think is really important, like to be age appropriately um forthcoming about what's going
Hmm.
on, because chances are if it's happening for you, like they're experiencing it, but two, genetically they will probably experience it at some point as well, and it
Yeah.
makes it normal, right, for them to be like, oh, I'm not a problem, my mom's just tired or whatever, because kids are
Right.
egocentric, or they internalize it by default.
Yes. Yeah. And that's not only is it helpful to be forthcoming about it, but I think there is something to be said. There's something to be said about talking about challenges or frustrations or like I said, like if I'm like trash, you know, literally all I mean is that the trash needs to go out and it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be it's not a big deal. It's not a big
Right.
deal. And
Right.
you can be frustrated and you can be upset and you can lose your shit and you can do all of these things and it doesn't mean anything about how good you are and it doesn't mean like it just
Right.
is. And
Right.
if you can work through those conflicts. And I think
Right.
maybe is that like maybe it's not a millennial thing. Maybe it's just like a lot of us I think have uh, pain from having relationships fall apart because of conflict. And so that's how
Yeah.
I frame it is like I'm trying to teach my kids that you can have a conflict or be upset and it be
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah, and from like my experience growing up, I think that it's like having wants and needs and identifying that there are things that need to be done can be devoid of like uh moral standing, or
Yeah.
like implied, you know what I mean? Because it's the thing of, I feel like millennials at large were taught to read in between the lines because nothing was direct, and so it was like you need to be quiet and obedient and present well. So there's a lot of emotional reading in between the lines that you have to do with adults. At least that was like my experience, where it's like, okay, are you like trash, but like, are you mad at me because I took the trash, like because I didn't take the trash out? Are you made, or is it just like, nope, just want you to take the trash out, right? Like,
Yeah.
being clear in the communication was not something that was like prioritized for us growing up. So I think trying to teach our kids, like, hey, sometimes like me being like, if you're worried that I'm upset, like you can ask me, like, did you, I think it's the transparency of clear communication and like cultivating that clear, direct communication in your home so that it's like, no, this is normal. And it's okay to say, I actually have been trying to ping pong between what to do with that with one of my kids, because they are so honest and direct that I'm like, but are we labeling what they're saying as mean because it's actually mean? Or are they being honest and we just don't like how they phrased it? Because that's not fair.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, being direct is not something that they should have to apologize for. Like, how do we navigate that? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because it can turn into a conflict pretty quickly. There can be hurt feelings, but that doesn't necessarily the way that one kid communicated it was incorrect.
Right. Yeah. As you're talking about this, I know we brought this up before. There are those cultural characteristics. It's white supremacy culture. And when you think about the hierarchy of who has rights or power in a parent-child relationship,
Mm-hmm.
there is always this don't challenge authority and don't
Yeah.
upset authority. And there's this emotional, we talk about like how emotional labor can be weaponized all the time. And I feel like maybe with children that happens a lot, where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
don't upset your parents, don't say anything that will make them
Yeah.
upset. And like
Yep.
you said, there's that like having to read between the lines and predict. And when someone like, it's really challenging if an adult is like, no, it's fine, but it's not fine.
Right.
And
Right.
not know, like trying to prevent it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to bring this like back around to the
Mm-hmm.
social conditioning that women get,
Yeah.
where it's like, I feel like we have to guess what society
Mm-hmm.
wants from us. And it's like this hypervigilance of constantly wanting
Yes.
to be better and do better because you want to be seen as worthy or valuable
Right.
or,
Right.
and I honestly, I shouldn't gender that, but it all just feels like hypervigilance. Is this, am I mentally ill? Do I have a mental illness?
Wait, hold on a second. Is this a mental health podcast? I like, okay, here's the other thing too. Like this is why this is so interesting, because to that point of like hypervigilance, this is where when people come for fair play coaching, this is why sometimes we get into childhood trauma, because it's like, this is not just about taking the trash out on time or whatever on time means. These are deeply held convictions that are based on your family of origins understanding of what was moral and good,
Mm-hmm.
including whose job it is to do that, if it's gendered, or
Mm-hmm.
whose, what time you do it at, or how quickly you do it, right? Like, there's so many things that underlie that. And to your point about like figuring out with kids of like that white supremacy principle of like authority and respecting adults. There's a book that I'm reading right now that I am absolutely adoring called Parenting Beyond Power, how to use connection and collaboration to transform your family and the world. And the author is white. The author is a parenting educator with experience in a psych and education. That's why I really like this book. But talks about how dismantling that. This is how we learned white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism from our parents, and we will replicate this with our children unless we make a different choice. So this idea between like understanding our relationship in terms of autonomy and respect and respectability politics that we even encounter in our own home that are inherently white supremacist, noticing like how we negotiate. It's not negotiation, it's collaboration is the word that she uses, right? It's collaborating with your kids, and the framework she lays out was refreshingly similar to the way that I have like clumsily stumbled into some of the spaces where we problem solve with our kids of, I have a need that needs to be met. You have a need that needs to be met. What are some ideas that we both have about how to get both of our needs met so that we can work this out together? But doing that again, and doing that with a partner within a household, is those interconnected tasks that ripple effect and affect one another. That's why developing frustration tolerance and learning like emotional social emotional language and words for how, like, describing how we feel and clear communication, that's why all of those things are interconnected,
Mm.
right? It's like it's a microcosm for society at large. And so if you have ever tried to do something like manage your domestic household labor and then ended up, getting divorced or having to completely change the way your family functions, like from its foundation, it's not just you. That's why, right? Like, or if doing, like, trying to take on those tasks has landed you in couples therapy or caused you to reevaluate the nature of your relationship and how your household is run, that's why. It's like, at least from what I feel like I can speak for both of us. From what we've seen, that's good. Like, that's what it is supposed to do, is to dismantle those wider systems to make you a more whole version of yourself and your family.
Yeah. It really is wild. It's it's hard to talk about any of the household outside of this. Like, you can't talk
Yeah.
about what
Yeah.
goes on in the household without those systems. I love how you broke that down. There is this author named Caroline J. Sumlin, Sumlin. She wrote a book called We'll All Be Free. And it's how a culture of white supremacy devalues us and how we can reclaim our true worth. And I thought that, like, I know I have the book that you're talking about. I got it on audio. I'm excited to read it. I read We'll All Be Free, and I thought it was really great. It was a great breakdown of a lot of this internalized stuff where,
Mm,
like you said, where it's like, I don't want to rock the boat. I want to be
yeah.
productive. I want to fit a certain mold. And it's like, it kind of puts together all the pieces.
Yes.
And I guess, like, I will bring it completely all the way back to what happened to me this morning with just being like stuck in executive function jail where I like could not figure out what to do. And the more I unpack what parts are white supremacy culture, what parts are unrealistic capitalist pressures to do things, um,
Mm-hmm.
the more I can forgive myself for that elevation when it happens. And the more I can be like, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get
Yes.
to
I
it.
will get there. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that in and of itself helps my frustration tolerance. I'm just like,
Yes.
it's fine.
Yep.
It's okay.
Yes. And I think
And
that's a
it's
great
like
example. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
self-learning is where that, like, just learning about myself has helped.
And honestly, I think that is what, like, I think always in therapy or like in self-discovery in general, I think that we have this idea of what something is supposed to look like, and it never looks exactly like we picture. I think what you're describing is what frustration tolerance looks like. Right? I think the surface level remedy, or like the quick, easy answer that can be made into an Instagram reel or posted on, a mommy IG feed, is take a deep breath, go on a walk, take a bubble bath. And in actuality, it is understand that you are unwinding and unraveling years and decades of messaging and even generations of messaging that have come before you that are ingrained in your literal DNA epigenetics, right? Like, understanding that you're recognizing and unraveling things that are so deeply ingrained that you have to give yourself space to know that, like, it's okay. It's that is what reparenting is reminding yourself that, like, no, you're okay, right? Like, your child version of yourself is like activated or triggered, you bump up against that bruise, you get frustrated, and that adult version of you who is learning goes, hey, it's all right, no problem. We're just gonna wipe that up. We're just gonna fill that water up later. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. It also connected for me when you said that about having to remember on the way to school. of like fill the water, fill the water, fill the water. I'm like, no wonder I wrote so much shit in ballpoint pen on the top of my hands as a teenager. I did that all the time.
Yeah, same.
Like constantly. I'm like, I need to start doing that again. That was really helpful.
Do
Then
you
I didn't have to
ever?
remember.
Here's what I do. I go, I took my meds. I like
Out
just like
loud?
out loud to myself. And you know what? This is so funny. I don't know if anyone else does this. I will say, I took my meds, and then I will look at something in the house so that it's like a screen grab, like I just took a picture. So later
Okay.
I can be like, where was I standing there?
Where was I?
Was that
Where was-
today?
Okay. Do you remember there was it was like an early reader or like new reader series of books called Cam Jansen. I'm sure I've told this story before. Cam Jansen, and she was a girl detective who would take pictures of things in her mind, like as she would be like click, and like she would say click out loud and blink her eyes to like take a mental picture. That is how I function. Where I like, well, I'll be like, did I take my meds today? And I'm like, okay, well, where were you standing when you took your meds? What cup did you have to go grab a cup? What cup did you
Yep.
take it with your coffee? Right? Where I'm like, I have to play back. It's not flawless, but that's exactly what I do. Where I'm like Cam Jansen, I'm like, click, took your meds. Great job.
Well,
You
yeah,
did
and
it.
then it's like, oh no, what was that yesterday? What picture is that? That's the double-edged sword of routine.
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
oh no.
One step outside of routine and you're like, oh shit. It's 1 p.m. I didn't take any meds today. Or I'll be sitting on the couch, I'll text you, I'll be like, I don't know, man, I'm so depressed today. And then I'm like, oh, I got up 30 minutes late and I forgot to make my coffee, so I didn't take any of my meds.
Right. Yep.
It's 1 p.m. That's why I feel depressed. Okay. Cool. Cool. Good to know that one differentiation in my whole routine can fuck up my whole day. That's great.
Really cool. Really cool existing. Love existing.
Really cool being a person. Really cool being a person. Also, I wrote this down and I want to make sure that I mention it because I feel like this is like, oh my God. But the interconnected tasks and like holding that anxiety of like trying to get everything done. This is why I hated group projects so much in school.
Oh, yeah.
Holy shit. Because it was the thing of like, I can never rely on, I don't want to leave my grade up to anybody else. The point of a group project is to get a group that will let me do all the fucking work so I can get it done and I know what grade I'm going to get. It's people that I know will do exactly what I tell them to do. That's a group project. Is a group that will do exactly what I say. Because I can't do, you know what I mean? So then it's like, yeah, no fucking wonder that I'm like, why am I the only one that everybody depends on? And it's like, bitch, that's how you cooperated in group projects your whole life.
Yeah.
You set yourself up that way. And it's like, God damn it.
Uh-huh.
The call's coming from inside the house. I did this.
I
did
Too
this
real.
to me.
Too real. Oh man. Okay. Fascinating. I did fill the water. I did the dishes. I'm going to do the laundry. I am.
Out loud.
I'm gonna do
I did
it.
the laundry.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I took the trash out. I did so many things. That's the good thing is that once I get hit with these like paralysis mornings, then I do all of it. It all gets done all in 30 minutes.
For sure.
In a 30-minute burst. So
in a 30-minute burst. And that's the thing too. Like if you hit that decision paralysis or you hit that, setting a timer, like a visual timer is really, really helpful to be like, I'm going to put, you know what? I'm just going to get as much done as I can in 30 minutes. And 90% of the time I can get all of those things done in 30 minutes.
And maybe this is poor practice. Who cares? It gets it done.
If it works,
sometimes,
it's not poor practice. Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I will give myself a little piece of candy after. Get a little candy.
What the fuck? You have to give yourself a little treat. Sometimes I won't even start the tasks until I've gotten a little treat. I do it before. It's positive reinforcement. I trust myself enough to know that I will get this done. I deserve a little treat for that.
Uh-huh. The shame of having the treat first and not finishing the task is enough.
It's true.
Motivation enough.
Maybe that's why I do it, is because the shame is more motivating than the treat.
Oy, too real. Okay, we'll put links to the books in the comment section. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that parenting book. and reading it
Yeah.
myself.
Absolutely. And if you want to join in on the discussion further to talk about this episode, you can join our Patreon, $5 a month or $7 a month, up to you. You can join our community, and each week we have a discussion thread where people can put comments to talk about the episodes. We can have an ongoing conversation about it. And you can ask us questions. You can ask for recs, whatever you need. We have that there too. We really appreciate you guys and your support. It means a lot to us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Time to Lean. Your questions and stories are what keep us going, so keep those voicemails and messages coming.
Until our next episode, remember that you can always find us on social media and, of course, in your podcast feed. You can also subscribe for $5 a month on Spotify for uninterrupted episodes and bonus content.
We're so grateful for your support. See you next time.